Spiritual master is the only way by which we can grow devotional service. Attachment to speed, with our reverence. Our going face one can sufficient. Contain the mercy of Krishna. Our only have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet, perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, perfect and great. From him we stand preeminence. The Vedic scriptures sing in this character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, please be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter in your lotus feet. His divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna devotees. Good to see everybody today. We welcome in our online audience. We'll continue our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam today. Just a couple quick announcements. We have Prasadam distribution in Germantown today. Anybody that would like to join, they'll be going out to distribute right after breakfast. We also have our spring Easter holiday baskets that we distribute to our neighbors. Many of them were made yesterday, but there's still some to be made today, and then they will be distributed also. That'll begin around 10 o'clock. So if you have time, please get involved in any of these activities. We'll now change I don't need it, but you just, sorry, I should have done. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari.
Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtuki. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, I should first offer one's respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishis, the supermost human beings, unto the goddess of learning, Mother Saraswati, and unto the author, Srila Vyasadeva. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart becomes almost completely destroyed, and devotional service becomes established within oneself as an irrevocable. So, our text for today is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, text number 5. The meter for this verse is the meter for the Brahma Samhita. Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhujakosha gandham
Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhujakosha gandham
Jigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nityam
Jigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nityam
Bhaktya grihita charana parayaya chatesam
Bhaktya vidita charana paraya chatesham
Napaishinatha hridayam buruhat swapumsam
Napaishinatha hridayam buruhat swapumsam
Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhujakosha gandham
Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhujakosha gandham
Jigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nitam
Jigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nityam
Trying to make it bigger. Got this search button here. Give me one second. That's that. There we go. Bhaktya grihita charana paraya chatesam
Bhaktya
Gita Charana Parayatesham
Napaishi natha hridayam buruhat swapumsam
Napaishinatha hridayam buruhat swapumsam
Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhuja kosha gandham.
Ye tu
Tadiya
tvadiya charanam
Charanam Bhujakosakandham
Chigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nitam.
Yuktanti Karanam
Bhaktya grahita charana paraya chatesham.
Bhaktyagrihita Charana Paraya Chatesham
Na paishinata hridayam buruhat swapumsam.
Napayasnada Hridayam Buruhat Satpumsam
Somebody like to chant? Tu tvadiya charanam bhuja kosha gandham. Jigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nityam. Bhaktya grihita charanam paraya chatesam. Vaishinata hridayam buruhat swapumsam. Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhuja kosha gandham. Jigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nityam. Bhaktya grihita charanam paraya chatesam. Vaishinata hridayam buruhat swapumsam.
Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhujakosha gandham.
Ye tu tvadiya charanam bhuja kosha gandham.
Praktikana vidara shruti vata nitam.
Jigranti karna vivarai shruti vata nityam.
Jagrihita charanam paraya chatesham.
Bhaktya grahita charanam paraya chatesam.
Hinatava hridayam burata svapumsham.
Vaishinata hridayam buruhat swapumsam. Anyone else? Okay, the synonyms. Yea, those who. Two, but. Tvadiya, your. Charanam ambuja, lotus feet. Kosha, inside. Gandham, flavor. Jigranti, smell. Karna, vivarai, through the channel of the ears. Shruti vata nitam, carried by the air of Vedic sound. Bhaktya, by devotional service. Grahita charana, accepting the lotus feet. Pararaya, transcendental. Cha, also. Tesha, for them. Na, never. Apaishi, separate. Natha, O my Lord. Hridaya, heart. Amburat, from the lotus of. Swapumsam, of your own devotees. This is Lord Brahma speaking. O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. It's a really beautiful verse, very poetic. Shri Gaurnitai ki, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki, Shri Radha Sharat Bihari ki jai. Let's repeat it together. Oh my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound, through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. For the pure devotee of the Lord, there is nothing beyond the lotus feet of the Lord. And the Lord knows that such devotees do not wish anything more than that. The word "to" specifically establishes this fact. The Lord also does not wish to be separated from the lotus hearts of those pure devotees. That is the transcendental relationship between the pure devotees and the personality of Godhead. Because the Lord does not wish to separate himself from the hearts of such pure devotees, it is understood that they are specifically dearer than the impersonalist. The relationship of the pure devotees with the Lord develops because of devotional service to the Lord on the authentic basis of Vedic authority. Such pure devotees are not mundane sentimentalists, but are factually realist because their activities are supported by Vedic authorities who have given oral reception to the facts mentioned in the Vedic literatures. The word haraya is very significant. Hara bhakti, or spontaneous love of God, is the basis of an intimate relationship with the Lord. The highest stage of relationship with the Lord can be obtained simply by hearing about him, his name, form, quality, etc. From the authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, recited by pure, unalloyed devotees of the Lord. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and the spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. The verse right before this, this is kind of a contrasting verse, and Srila Prabhupada makes note of this in the purport. He says the word "to" is being used here to emphasize the qualities of the devotee versus of the non-devotee. So let's just go back to the previous verse real quick to hear what it says. It says that, I'll just read the end of it. Those who are destined to be dispatched to the path of hell neglect your personal form because of speculating on material topics. And then compare that to today's verse. So for those that just go on speculating on material topics, and they deny the personal form and relationship with the Supreme Lord, their destination is not very favorable. But in this case, it says, but persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears, they accept your devotional service. And for them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. The smell of the aroma of your lotus feet. So this is an indication that there is a fragrance that comes from the Supreme Lord. That's an intoxicating fragrance. But the way that we smell that fragrance, this beautiful aroma, is not through our nose, but is actually through, it's transformed into the sound of the Vedas, which we then receive through our ears. And that is the way that we're able to perceive the Supreme Lord, through this oral reception. And that those that receive this through their ears and assimilate it through their heart and intelligence, they accept your devotional service. And this bond and conviction is created between then the hearer and practitioner and the Supreme Lord, that Krishna is then never separated from the lotus of their hearts, meaning he never leaves them. This reminds me of the verse in the 10th canto of the Bhagavad Gita, 10:9. Machita makata prana boreyantas parasparam kathayantas chamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees, they always dwell in me, and their lives are dedicated to always hearing and enlightening one another about me. Their lives are dedicated to the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada says in that verse, there is no separation. 24 hours a day, the devotee is always fixed on thinking about Krishna. And for that person, Krishna actually never leaves them either. Krishna allows them to always be remembered. Krishna says, from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. Matasmita jnanam apohanam cha. To remember is also something that is dependent upon Krishna. Just as forgetfulness is also dependent upon Krishna. Krishna just fulfills that desire that we want. So Krishna gives that ability to constantly remember, just as he gives the ability to constantly forget about him. Those that receive the transcendental message, and how do we receive it? Through oral reception, through the ears. And that is the way that we're able to experience this aroma of the Lord's lotus feet. It's very beautiful. Our senses, we can spiritualize our senses by engaging them in Krishna's service. Just as a piece of iron placed into fire can take on the qualities of fire. But our senses are made of material elements, and therefore smelling the aroma of the Lord's lotus feet, oh, how fortunate we would be. We don't have with our material senses to be able to see that. Just like with our material eyes, we can't see spirit. Krishna manifests himself in the deity form. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna says, I would like to see that form of yours that pervades all over the entire universe. Krishna says, okay, I can show it to you. But first I have to give you the eyes to see. But this sound vibration, through hearing of the Vedic teachings, through hearing the sacred mantras, like the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, this is the medium in which we're able to purify our senses and receive the Supreme Lord. Krishna then also says in that 10th canto, in 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, how, to the devotees who are always absorbed in him, he also helps them by giving them the constant remembrance. But he says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam tadami buddhi yogam tvam yenamam upayantite. That he gives them this special mercy, this knowledge, this ability to always remember, meaning that he is always with them, to show them special mercy, I dwelling within their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness that's born of ignorance. That this forgetfulness that we want to experience here in a separate relationship from Krishna. Krishna says, I enter your heart with the shining lamp of what? Of knowledge, this transcendental knowledge. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says here, the Lord also does not wish to be separated from the lotus heart of his pure devotees. That is the transcendental relationship between the pure devotees and the personality of Godhead. We were recently reading on Thursday about, in the teachings of Queen Kunti, that there are two relationships that we can have with the Supreme Lord. One was called Sambhoga, and the other was Vipralambha. Anybody remember what those two were? What those terms meant? Sambhoga and Vipralambha. Vipralambha we're used to hearing. Is service and separation is the Vipralambha. And then the opposite of that would be is service and union together. So these are the two relationships, general categories of relationships in which we experience with Krishna, either through connection or through separation. But in either way, even through separation with his devotees, Krishna's pure devotees, Krishna is experiencing a high pleasure. And he's putting his devotees into a condition in which they will think of Krishna more and more, only to increase their love for him. And this is shown by the relationships with the devotees, with the gopis, who are celebrated as Krishna's highest devotees. So when it says here that Krishna does not wish to be separated from the lotus hearts of his pure devotees, one may ask then, well, why does he relish this relationship of Vipralambha? And why does he experience it with those that are most dear to him? And the answer is that they're actually not separated, because the intensity, he's just increasing the intensity of their relationship. For instance, when the gopis were enjoying with Krishna in the Rasa Lila, and Krishna disappeared from them, their thoughts of Krishna only intensified. They went into a transcendental panic. And then they started working together to try to help find Krishna. asking everywhere. And actually to them, when they asked, what is more pleasurable, this feeling of separation or this union? And they said that actually, when we are with Krishna, there is only one Krishna. But when we are without Krishna, everything is Krishna. And there are so many Krishnas. When we see the trees, we see Krishna. When we see the rivers, we see Krishna. When we see the sky, when we see the bird, everything reminds us of Krishna. And there's so many Krishnas to see. And this is Krishna, by separating, is actually, in a deeper sense, uniting and bringing that ability to unite in a higher state. That is different than our separation from Krishna here in this material world. Our separation isn't really vipralamba. It's due to Maya. It's an illusion where we have chosen to want to be separate from Krishna. So we may do some devotional service, and then we may say, oh, I had enough, I want to go watch a movie. And we want to forget about Krishna. That's not vipralamba, that's not the separation, because that's really not intensifying our desire to want to see Krishna. We just, we've reached our limit of absorption, and we are still kind of trying to come to the level of complete purification and absorption in Krishna. That separation is actually a separation which does not bring us closer to the Lord, but keeps us in the material energy. We're in the journey, we're on the process, we're purifying ourselves, and we want to stay. The more we are associated, the more that process will begin to work. But the separation, that is being spoken about, we should be clear that our material engagement versus separation of Krishna through our material engagement versus separation by Krishna putting his devotee in a separated place in order to intensify one's love for him are two different states of existence. Let's continue here. Because the Lord does not wish to separate himself from the hearts of such pure devotees, it is understood that they are specifically dearer than the impersonalist. Krishna does say this in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 2. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect." So there's always this conversation going on. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the comparisons of the impersonal path in comparison to the path of devotional service. And each time, Krishna's devotees, they are always establishing that the path of devotional service is higher. Directly from Sri Krishna, Bhakti Mama Vijanati. One can know me as I am only through the path of devotional service. Krishna, because there's a relationship. We're not trying to deny our relationship with God. We're actually eager to develop that relationship with God. Now, also with that, from the impersonalist path, oftentimes they categorize devotees as being mundane sentimentalists. Lord Chaitanya experienced this himself. He was a sannyasi and he traveled to Benares. And while he was there, that was the headquarters for the Mayavad sannyasis. And it was headed by one Prakashananda Saraswati. And while in Benares, Lord Chaitanya actually had a really significant triumph for Gaudiya Vaishnavism. While there, he was younger in age in comparison to many of the other sannyasis. And they had somewhat a bit pity on him, because they're saying, here's a young, uninformed renunciant, and he's getting caught up in this emotional activity of going on Sankirtan, going on the streets, mingling with the general public, and getting them to chant kirtan. So they would criticize him. And this brought distress to the followers of Lord Chaitanya. No one likes their teacher to be criticized. This brings, a sense of defensiveness. We have to defend, our teacher. Their great personality, sacrificed so much, has given us so much. And out of gratitude, we feel this sense of defensiveness. So one day, Lord Chaitanya was invited to a Brahmana's house where there was going to be a gathering of all these sannyasis. And typically, Lord Chaitanya would avoid such. But in order to try to put an end to this controversy, he accepted this invitation. And when he arrived there, he took a seat in a very humble place, right by the shoe area where people wash their feet. So it would be like not here in the temple, but they would just sit out in the shoe area. It's considered to be, Americans don't think of it so much, but in Vedic culture, the shoe area is considered to be like a muchi place. Even now we see people that come in, they don't like to pick up their shoes and put them on the rack. They like to just kind of pick their feet up and try to place it on there because they don't want to touch their feet. American culture, they're used to wearing their shoes on their bed. So they don't, it doesn't bother them so much. But Lord Chaitanya, by doing this, he showed that he took a very humble position. At the same time, he was effulgent. He had this aura about him, and this attracted these elderly sannyasis to him. They said, "You're humble, you're glowing, come sit with us." And he says, you are my seniors, and I'm not qualified. But they picked him up and they brought him over. And then they began to quiz him and say, we notice that you're out in the public a lot, performing Sankirtan. Shri Gaurnitai ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Shri Radhashar Bihari ki jai. And they took the opportunity to enlighten him that the activities of a sannyasi should be very strict. They should not be seen as compromising the values. It should be very sober. When a person should see a sannyasi, they should have a lot of reverence toward them. And the duty of a sannyasi is to study the Vedas and teach the Vedas. But you don't appear very sober. In fact, you seem sometimes like a madman, jumping up and down, chanting loudly the Lord's holy names and encouraging other people to chant. This is not the activity of the sannyasi. So they were, again, wanting to instruct him, give him some encouragement. And Lord Chaitanya said, I'm following the teachings of my spiritual master, who unequivocally has taught me that the chanting of the Lord's holy names is the only means of deliverance in this age of Kali Yuga. You can study the Vedas all you want, but the conclusion of the Vedas can be achieved by the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And they accepted this. They accepted his sincerity. But then they said, but still, you're a sannyasi, and it is the dharma of a sannyasi to study the Vedas. Why don't you do so? And then Lord Chaitanya began to explain the Vedic teachings from the perspective of devotional service. That Krishna is a person, and that the goal of the Vedas is Krishna Prema. And then he talked about Sankaracharya, who is the head of the Mayavadi school of philosophy, saying that he has basically misrepresented and misled people through various interpretations. And then he gave the understanding through bhakti. And in doing that, he transformed the hearts of these very staunch, fixed, elderly, respected Mayavadi sannyasis. So, as devotees, we don't want to be categorized just as mundane sentimentalists. Our practice is Sankirtan. Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtana. But we also should be fixed in the teachings of the scriptures so that we can speak about them. First, we have to be, through oral reception, we have to hear them. This is what's being said here. That such pure devotees are not mundane sentimentalists, but are factually realists because their activities are supported by the Vedic authorities, who have given oral reception to the facts mentioned in Vedic literatures. We have to hear regularly. We have to study our scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Our lineage is filled with great spiritual teachers, scholars. Srila Jiva Goswami, Baladev Vidyabhushana, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada. And they've written volumes and volumes of literatures. I've gone through so much inconvenience to write these literatures, to educate the devotees on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. When you look at what Srila Prabhupada did, he would go to sleep for a few hours. He'd be up all night long when most people are sleeping, translating Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He did this for us. Day in and day out, year in, year out. 3-4 hours a day. A day he would sleep. This inconvenience. Why? Because he understood the importance of these teachings. He wanted us to become educated in the science of Krishna consciousness. So making a daily practice of reading, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and also reading should be there in the life of every devotee. Just as we chant the holy names, we also need to practice educating ourselves. Oral reception. They say we got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should at least hear twice as much as we speak. We should assimilate it. Sometimes we hear it goes in one ear and out the other. But really, we should begin to process this. digest it within our heart, understand how it can change us, and then share our realizations with others. Now, para bhakti, or spontaneous love of God. This highest stage of relationship with the Lord can be attained simply by hearing about him from authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. I wanted to speak also, there was a sentence here about devotional service in the purport. The relationship of the pure devotees with the Supreme Lord develops because of devotional service to the Lord on the authentic basis of Vedic authority. So, when we hear about Krishna, the tattva of Krishna, our relationship with Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, the natural next step is to want to do something. The way we express our gratitude is through service, by giving. Krishna, how may I serve you? The translation of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is, oh Lord, please engage me in your service. Yes, hearing is service, and that service is being done for us. But then we have to think, what can I do then to serve Krishna? And that service that we develop gives us purpose, gives our life meaning, and attaches us in a relationship with Krishna. Shravanam Kirtanam, chanting, hearing and chanting. These are the first two steps in the process of devotional service. And surely one can become perfected in this. But the engagement of our body, our minds, our senses in the service of the Lord is also required. And this gives us a solidified reason to continue to hear and chant. I may have told this before, there's a story with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. My god brother Bhakti Vasudeva Swami told this during his appearance day, was that there was a devotee living in the temple, and all day long, all he did was chant. All day long. And everybody else was going around and they were engaged in doing different things. Some were shopping, some were cleaning, some were doing pujari service, some were cooking, some were doing, book distribution, different types of services. And they're saying, why does this one person get a chance to do nothing but sit and chant all day long? He could say the same thing. Maybe he would be engaged in reading all day long. And he says, if you're able to do this for 16 hours a day, then you can sit down and you can chant as well. But unless you're able to do that, then and there's nothing wrong with it, you need to use your body. You need to use your hands, your legs, your eyes, your nose, your ears, your tongue, your mind, and engage it in a very practical way of serving Krishna. So we have to be realistic. Sometimes somebody just want to read all day. They just want to study all day. But a taste for actually doing something for Krishna. Krishna, how may I serve you? To the Guru, how may I serve you? That is our perfection, that we bring pleasure to Krishna. Well, at the same time, we have to be educated. And this is where we have to use our intelligence of how we balance our lives in such a way that we're practically engaged in Krishna service. We're connecting our hearts to Krishna with devotion. We're purifying our senses. We're getting transcendental understanding of Krishna and putting this whole package together. Again, a very beautiful verse. I'll repeat it once again. O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of our ears, accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions, comments, thoughts, realizations? Hare Krishna.
I like the point that you were making about using all of our senses in our bodies, and I like that story that you were just sharing now, because sometimes you may feel, I just want to, sit and read. I wish I could just sit and read all day or sit and chant all day, but in practicality, I know I can only speak for myself. In practicality, for myself, I'm not able to do that. I love to sit and study all day, but I do need to move. My mind is too hectic. My body needs to move around, and that's where I'm at, right? It's practical for me. I'm not there, not up there, right? So I need to engage my body in that service. So I appreciate that comment. And I think my question then is, how do we balance, the service and the reading and the chanting? I mean, how do we know what balance to take with all of that?
Best is when we this is why it's important when we serve under the direction of a spiritual master, because they can give you the prescription, kind of the life prescription. And many teachers, they have requests to their disciples, hear at least one class a day, study for at least a half hour, read for at least a half hour a day. Sometimes they have these sadhana scorecards, which may seem a little bit mechanical, like, okay, I'm supposed to be developing this, spontaneous, relationship. But this rigidity is part of sadhana bhakti, where we have to have a discipline in our life. And that discipline breaks our attachment and helps develop a taste, a natural taste for Krishna. But sometimes it needs to be structured in a way. So we have to take an honest look at our life, discuss it with it. If you obviously take on more than you can possibly do, then it may not be sustainable. It may fluctuate up and down. So part of sadhana is keeping, always increasing, never decreasing, but never setting the bar beyond a point that's not sustainable, in which you're kind of doomed to fail. But for those that have taken vows of initiation, there's a lot of time invested in your chanting. But similarly, the time has to also be invested in hearing. Prabhupada, he spoke. The program at the temple where you typically set up that in the morning was dedicated to sadhana, and then you'd have a class in the morning, and then in the daytime you would be doing various types of service for Krishna, and then in the evening you'd have another type of class. And I don't know if it was Prabhupada who called it this or someone else, but he called it the ISKCON sandwich, where on the top and bottom you'd have these philosophical educational classes that really, and what they do is they really focus you in your relationship with Krishna. But when you do act throughout the day, you know why you're acting and who you're acting for, and the proper consciousness in which you should be serving. So you have that kind of structure. But mornings are best for sadhana. We should try to hear at least one class a day, and spend some time reading, reciting verses. And when we follow this formula, we actually find that it's very fulfilling, freeing, There's an eagerness to want to learn more, read more. And then when you talk to people and devotees, you actually have something to share with them as well. Is that,
That's great. I know one thing I always struggle with personally is that in my profession, it requires a lot of reading and listening in classes to maintain my education. So that's always a balancing point.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
yeah, it can be hard sometimes to kind of fit that in. Mornings that therefore are like kind of usually the best time once the day gets going. Sometimes it's hard, even mentally, it's hard to make the adjustment and the turnaround. I found for myself sometimes chanting during the day, you just don't have the level of focus, right? Because there's just, the mind is so attached to so many things that are going on. I'm going here, I'm going there, I have to call this person. My time better be served calling this person, just getting it out of the way. You know, in the morning time, you just don't have those options. So best to absorb ourselves then, but not, other than that, to use our intelligence a little bit to structure our lives in a way which we can make sure that we get that. We do have, it's one of the importance of having these classes every morning. In the evening, we have classes here at the temple. We do 3 days a week from 5 to 5:30. We read online, just giving opportunities. And when you talk to the devotees that are consistently doing that, they really feel like this is a huge part of their day. It may take a while to get into that rhythm, but once in that rhythm, when you step outside of it, you really feel like something is missing. Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions, realizations? Anybody smell the aroma of Krishna's lotus feet?
So when we are in material world, we have jobs, we have responsibilities, and we are connected with spiritual world. Conflict is always there. There should be how much time we devote to our responsibilities, to our professional commitment, and spiritual practice. That conflict is always there. But prioritizing what matters. So how to prioritize? Do we prioritize spiritual practices, or chanting, or my job, or my social responsibilities? It seems sometimes leave those because I feel more connected to my spiritual, drop my job, forget my family, or so the priority, how to prioritize that is something. It seems a big challenge.
That's why I felt the Bhagavad Gita is so helpful, because Krishna is talking to Arjuna, who has, let's say he has a job. His job is as a warrior, a Kshatriya. And he's never told Arjuna, Krishna's never told Arjuna to just stop your job, right? But at the same time, he also never stop thinking of me. So that we make the distinction. I have this life and then I have this life. I have spiritual life and then I have to go and I have to work and be with my family and obligations, and I have that life. But when you pay attention closely to what Krishna is telling Arjuna, he's saying, even when you're in that life, which appears to be separate from me, so you're not chanting, meditating, reading, discussing, directly serving in Krishna's temple. He says, always think of me. Always think of me in the form of Krishna. And that way you will never be lost. So that is our challenge. So the prioritization, a lot of times we can separate some time out of our day to engage in sadhana practice, spiritual practice. But then the real challenge is that during the day, how do we remember Krishna? And that's why the sadhana is so important, because that sadhana will help us remember Krishna. So many thoughts come into our head all throughout the day. Why can't those thoughts be Krishna and be about Krishna? A mundane example is that when a boy falls in love with a girl, or a girl falls in love with a boy, they may be working all day long, in school all day long, but what is their thoughts on? They're thinking about the person that they're just fell in love with. They're going to call me. Should I call them? What are we going to do later? Thinking about their qualities. It makes them happy. So we can also follow Krishna's instruction when he says, always think of me. Always think of me in the form of Krishna. And at the same time, perform your prescribed duties of fighting with your mind and intelligence fixed upon me. Surely you will come to me. So that is our challenge. Not how to so much balance it. We can balance it. We get to give ourselves some credit, we just have to, that's willpower. I just have to give myself some discipline. We can organize our finances. We can organize our children's schedules. We can organize our, family schedules. We can organize our meal plans. So we can also organize some time in the day. We just have to want to do it. That's willpower. We just have to willpower. Now, the other part of it is, how do we remember Krishna all the time? That's what the Bhagavad Gita is teaching us. Okay. Thank you all for attending. Thank you online for joining us. Any questions or comments online?
Hey Krishna Prabhu. Very nice class. And I have really enjoyed your class today. It was really nice about hearing about the aroma. But I have one question. It says that the smell of the aroma of Krishna's lotus feet enters into our heart through the ears, into the lotus of our heart. What is the meaning of lotus of our heart?
The lotus of our heart. So the lotus is like the core of our heart. And we understand that Krishna is, his lotus feet. So this lotus is where, it's meaning that separated from the lotus or the core of our heart. The sentence, my understanding is that it's just a way of saying it's like the beautiful essence or the core of our heart. So, for them, you are never separated from the lotus of their heart.
Okay. Thank you. I thought it enters into the Lord which resides in our heart.
Yeah. So this is another way of saying Krishna is never separated. And not just from a superficial way, but from the lotus of their heart. So lotus is attached to a stem, so it's anchored there in our heart.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. And those online, if you want to come today, around 10:30, we're going to be distributing prasadam baskets in the neighborhood. If you'd like to join us for this activity, please come on by. Hare Krishna.